Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today, let's set this Bava Metzia Daf Tzadi Zayin. We're going to begin on Tzadi Zayin Amid Aleph, the third line from the top. Ahu Gavra, Deshol Davla Mechavri. So you have a person who borrowed a pail from his friend. Now, we've learned that when it comes to the Arba Shomrim, the din of a shoyl is that he's going to be basically chayav for everything, even when it comes to an oinus, like Shvur Mesa. However, the exception that we've seen throughout this parak is that Bal Imoy, if that the owner of this pail is with him and he was working with him, and this arrangement took place before the borrowing agreement, then it would be potter. Now, it broke. Now, the question is also, even if we'll say he's potter, the question is, when it's Mesa Machmas Malacha, was it that it broke in the normal way of use, or it was negligently broken? Asking to wrap up our Malay, I see Sahadi Deloy Shanis Bay the Iftar. You actually have an obligation to be able to prove that it died or it broke in the normal use, which we call Mesa Machmas Malacha. Then the shoyl will be potter. However, without you bringing this proof, you're going to be chayiv. You actually have to bring witnesses. And we discussed in yesterday's daf, what exactly does that mean? Would he have to reimburse for an entire new pail, or would he be able to return the broken pieces, assuming that has some value, and then give him the extra or the difference between a good pail and a broken one? It's possible that we're dealing with a broken pail, may be worthless, so then it wouldn't matter. Ha'u gavra d'shol shun mechabre. So another nice thing to borrow from your friend is a cat. Now, why are you going to borrow a cat? Because you have mice problems, and before calling an exterminator, a cat may do the trick. So chabrele achbere. So you have all these mice. Maybe this cat didn't realize what he was getting himself into. And all these mice ganged up on this one poor little innocent cat, v'katlu, and it killed the cat. So now the question is this considered to be Mesa Machmas Malacha? So Yosef Rabashi b'kemiboyle, he was trying to investigate, ki haigab damai, what's the din? Ki Mesa Machmas Malacha damiolo. Is this normal, or that it died in the normal course of trying to do its job, or maybe not? Or Malay, Rab Mordechai Rabashi, Hachi Amra Avimi Mahagrainia. This is what he said, Mishmeda Rabba, in the name of Rabba, Gavra Dinashi Katluhu Lodina Vloidaina. If women killed men, this is not the typical circumstance. Now, what does it mean? Women killing men, a woman with a knife or a gun can kill a man. So what difference does it make if it's a woman or a man? So Rashi delicately says, we're talking about boil bilis harbi mace. If this guy had tashmish with women and he died in the process of having relations, that is not normal. That's not something which is normal. So he was acting in a normal fashion, as a normal healthy man would do, but he died in the process. And therefore, so too, when it comes to this cat, this is considered to be Mesa Machmas Malacha. This is just a situation which is not expected, and therefore you would be potter. Says Taisus, Tema Maiki Boile, Hello Mesa Mamish Machmas Malacha. What's the whole question? It died, this cat, while it was doing its job. Yeshlemrdi Boile Imshin Bama Shahilicha Makam Shaharbe Achbar Matsuyin of Ein Lishmar Shuli Harguhu. You put it in a place where, again, it was infested with millions of mice. So you just threw it in the place with millions of mice. So in that situation, that's not normal. So maybe that's a different situation. And, okay. I entice us. Ikadi some say that the case was a little different. That Achol Achbre Tuva, this was a really good cat, and it actually ate a lot of the mice. But because it overindulged in its feeding frenzy of eating mice, V'chavel umes, the cat got sick, and then it died because of that. So Yosef Ravashi become ayin bo haigabdamai. Again, we want to figure out what the din is over here. So I'm really Mordechai Ravashi hacha emra avimi hargrani gabed nashi katluhu, using the same language of a man being killed by a woman through tashmish, lo dina v'lo dayana. He's still pater, since it's not common, and it's like it's not normal again, as we said, for a man to die while having too much tashmish with women. Omer Rabba. Haiman de boy lamishal midi michamri. So you want to borrow something. So you're going to be a shoyl, but you're nervous that if something happens to it that you're going to be chayiv. So the lifter, your job is to borrow something and figure out some legal loophole to be pater. So namely, you should say to him, Ashkin Maya, give me some water, and therefore, since you're using his service, so therefore all of a sudden now, if something happens to this animal, so you're going to be pater. Now, but the lender understands the laws too, he'll say no problem. Namely, shel beresha, first let's take care of this borrowing of my item, and then afterwards I'll give you something to drink. We said it has to be b'shas she'ela that he's bal imoy, and therefore if he only served you afterwards, then it won't work. Okay. Omer Rava Makri Dardiki. If you have a person who is a teacher of children, Shatla, let me see if Rashi says, Noiteya Kromin Lamechsa, which basically is a sharecropper, Tabcha, a butcher, V'umna, Rashi says, Makis Dam, a bloodletter, Sapar, Masa, or it says Rashi, I'm a sapres anshe ir betispaitis. You're a barber, the local city barber. So all these different people have different communal responsibilities to assist the whole city in different capacity. So kulhun bi'idan avidtaihu, all of these, while they're doing their work, kisheil b'balam damu, they fall into the category of like when someone borrows something and the baal is working with you. And therefore says Rashi, show him, and while you're doing this work, they borrow something, let's say your animal, and then it dies, then that person who borrowed it is going to be pater. Okay. Amrule Rabban lo Rava. So they point to Rava, Shoyol Mar, you're lent, they said, you're lent to us. So basically he's saying this to Rava, that you, Rava, are basically, you're lent to us. You have to work for me, because you're our teacher. Rabbeinu nishal lanu malachtenu lilmoid lanu Torah. It's your job, because you're an educator, Rava, that your job is to work for us. Sheyoshib alamid lanu Torah kol hayoim. You sit and teach Torah all day. V'im nishal menu behema mesa niftar. And therefore, Rava, if we borrow your cow, and then that cow dies, we will be pater because it's bal yimai. So Akbid, he got a little bit offended by that. Armalhuni said, "Lafkoi mimoinika beisu." Is your job to try to take away my money? I understand. Is that why? In order then you'll be pater, so you're going to take my cow and I'll lose my cow? Adarabba. Atun she'iltun li. You actually are lent to me. I, the teacher, you, my students, are lent to me. I'm not lent to you. You're lent to me. The truth is, I have total control over the curriculum that I teach you. You have no control. So it all has to do with the element of control. So as your teacher, I have the ability to set my own curriculum, whatever I want to teach you. And therefore, you're the one that's lent to me. I'm not lent to you. V'lohi. Ihu shal lahu b'yomi dekala, inhu shilule b'shar yomi. It actually depends. On yomi dekala, says Rashi, kishidarsh lefnei regel, b'hilchas regel, the lo maslash temuti l'mil sachriti. In that time, which is before the holidays, in which the teacher has to teach a set curriculum. You have to teach about Pesach. You have to teach about Sukkot. So since it's a set curriculum, then the Rebbe is, so to speak, lent to the student. However, it's true. When it's all the other time of the year, the teacher was able to choose whatever curriculum or whatever sermon or whatever drasha. And therefore, because of that the students are lent to him. So it's an interesting idea. Question 1. Rav Hashaynu Talmidim im shal mehem o sheshal mimenu im havi she'elu b'bayla. So it says like this: Im hu yachol l'shanais l'ishnois lahem sechet lafi ritzono. If he can teach whatever he wants, hem she'ulin loy. So then the students are lent to him. V'nifter im shal mehem. So if the teacher borrows their cow, then he'll be potter. V'im hadavar toli b'talmidim. If the students, or let's say when it comes to if you're working in a yeshiva, and they say, okay, this year you were teaching XYZ Masechta, so in that situation, it's like Masechta Dekal, and therefore you are lent to them. Now, it's an interesting thing to think about. Just because you're told a particular text, that doesn't mean that you don't have, maybe you have some leeway of how to teach it, or which Mefarshim to teach. So it's an interesting thing to think about how that works. That's where it gets, I would imagine, a little more complicated. Mareimar, back in the Gemara, Bar Chanina, Oiger could naisa bechozoi. So he lent, Rashi says, a preda, a mule. So he lent it out. So nafak, they went out, ledluye tu'una b'hadayu, to lift up a package with them. Pashu ba umes. There some negligence took place, and the donkey died, the preda died. So the question is, are they responsible to pay him? So Asla Kameda Rava Chayvinhu. They said yes, they're obligated to pay him for the donkey that died. So Rabban Rava Pshiba Bailim. Understand, I thought when we learn the case of Pshiba Bailim, as long as the Baal is there, says Rashi, showing Messiah B'Shas She'ela, he was actually helping this guy lift up this package. So why should he be chayiv? So Ichsef, he actually got a little embarrassed because Pshiba Baalim, even though we mentioned over there, maybe it's a little bit of machlokas when it comes to certain parts. L'sayif igoli milsa delameser tu'unahu denafak. So it turned out, says Rashi, lamesar lirois shel yarbu b'masa. He actually only went there. He didn't help him lift it up. All he did, he wanted to see that he wasn't putting too much on his donkey. So he was not actually helping him at all. And therefore, it's not a case of Baal Imoy. And therefore, because of that, that's why he's chayiv. So, now again, it was a machlokus. If you hold Pshiba Baalim is potter mishum hachi ichsef, el mandiyarmer chayiv amay ichsef. Why is he chayiv? He could just have held like the mandiyarmer that says Pshiba Baalim is chayiv. What type of question was that? Lo mifsha pashuba el gnuvi ignov umeisa kedarka began of havoy. So actually, what happened in this case was not really a case of Pshia, because then maybe, he could just say, you're chayiv in that case. What actually happened was, it was a case of ignuvi ignov, that this donkey was stolen, umeisa kedarka began of havoy, and it died in a normal way. We also committed a Rabba, v'chayivuhu. And Rabba therefore said that you're chayiv. Says Rashi, Yafil hachi chayivu, Di'i nami shavka malcha maves beganav havikaima. And this is an interesting question, that the malcha maves may have been killing things there, not here. So when it was stolen, you can say, well, it just died, so it was going to die anywhere. So it's not everyone holds like that. Hilkach mishin nignava chayiv b'tashlumin. So it was stolen, you have to pay. Now we said, well, isn't the case of Geneva B'Bailim? And Rashi says, Geneva Zu Shiata B'Chayva B'Bailim. He was actually there at the time it was stolen. As we learned on Sadi Hay not too long ago, Rashi quotes, Ima B'Shas She'ela Ein Tzarich Lios Ima B'Shas Shevur Mesa. He doesn't have to be there at the time of the actual incident, as long as he was there at the time of the She'ela. So Ichsef. So we go in Milsa, the Limser Tu'una Hudanafak. Again, it turned out that he, as we said before, that what really happened was the package was possibly too heavy. So again, he only went out in order to be able to inspect to make sure that the package was not too heavy. But he actually didn't help him at all anyway. Okay. That's the reason why he was chayiv. So it's, for different reasons we can say he would have been chayiv. So, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a case of Shiba Baal, because the case was stolen. Okay. Says the next mission. Says the Masnis, which will carry us through most of this next Amud. Hashoyel Sapara. So you borrow a cow. Shol chatzi yoyim v'sachar chatzi yoyim. What you do is, instead of just borrowing it for a whole day, you borrowed it for half a day, and the same cow, you rented it for half a day. So which becomes a little bit questionable, because the dinim of a shomer, of a borrower, is not the same as the din of a seicher, as a renter. So therefore, if something happens to it, so what's the din? Because, again, we know that a shomer, a shoyel, is chayv, certainly g'nei v'aveda, and it's chayv anointzen, like shvur mesa, for example. When it comes to a seicher, assuming, let's say, he has the din of, let's say, is shomer sachar, he has the same din like that, it's a machlokas. But let's say that's the case. He's chayv b'gnei v'aveda, maybe he's not chayv b'gnei v'aveda if he holds like a shemachinam, but he's going to be patur b'oinsin. So therefore, the question is, what is the din over here? When something happened, is it considered like a rental agreement, or is it like a borrowing agreement? For that matter, the Mishnah continues. Shol hayom v'sachar u'machar. You borrowed one day, rent the next day. Sachar achas v'shol achas u'meisa. Let's say you rented one animal and you borrowed another one, and it died. Says Rashi, Ashel achas v'sachar achas koi. So hamashel oimer. So the one who lends the animal, so he obviously is going to want to be reimbursed. So he's going to say a claim that's going to make the person who borrowed it or who rented it chayiv. So what's he going to say? Shu'ula mesa. He's going to say that it was borrowed, and because it borrowed, when it was an onus happened to it, he's chayiv to return. But and he's going to say, or it happened b'yom shahaysa shu'ula mesa. It died on the day in which it was a borrowing agreement, even though there was half a day rental, half a day, 1 day borrowing, 1 day renting. No, it died when it was borrowed, and therefore you're chayiv b'oinsin. As we continue Sadi Zayin Beis, or b'shasha ha'isa she'ula mesa, that hour it died, it was a borrowed animal. So he has this tinus bari saying that you definitely owe me money. Well, and the other person is unsure. So we know in the case of bari v'shema, bari adif. So therefore chayiv. That's the reason why he'll have to pay. And Rashi says it's beferish. Chayiv v'shalom de bari v'shema is bari adif. Hasaycher oimer. Let's say now we're dealing not the masker, the soicher, the one who actually rented the animal and borrowed the animal. He'll say sechura mesa. No, it died when it was being rented, and therefore I'm patur. Or b'yom shahaysa sechura mesa. It died on the day that it was rented. B'shasha ha'isa sechura mesa. It was during the half of the day in which it was a rental. So he's bari that he should be patur. V'lo yomer, and the maskir says eni odea patur. Again, for the same concept of bari v'shema, bari adif, and therefore in this case flipping it around. So therefore the seicher is the one who is going to be patur from reimbursing. What happens if we don't have bari v'shema? Ze'emer she'ula, ze'emer sechura. So you have bari v'bari. So what do we do here? So yeshav haseicher. So the renter has to make a shua that it shesechura mesa, because this is the din. When it comes to all shvuos, except for some rare exceptions like chaysha shvua and other cases, we say that the person should make a shvua and then be patur, and that's what we say here, because in case of bari v'bari. However, if both of them are shema, neither of them have a clue, then you have to split the difference. And this is based on the shita of sumchus, as we've seen many times in Shas. And Rashi quotes, "Moment mutal b'safik is cholkin." Says the Gemara. So shema mina, we can infer from here. Manu bi'adacham. If one person says Yomi $100, v'lo emer ein yodeh, the other person says I don't know. So it's a case of bar v'shema, so chayiv. So in that case, it's clear that you should be chayiv because bar v'shema bar yadav. So leim tev the Rab Nachman. this is actually not in accordance to the sheet of Rav Nachman. Ditmar. Rav Yehuda Amri Chayev, which makes sense. However, Rav Nachman, Rabbi Yochanan Amri Potter. He says you're Potter. Why? Why would you be Potter? It's Baruch Shem Radav, says Rashi. Because Uki Memoyne B'Cheskes Mari Vo Tafkiyam Sfeika. We're not sure over here. Okay, we don't have witnesses. It's okay. We have a Bori, we have a Shema, but on the other hand, in this situation, it's not so clear if it's 100%. So therefore, what we should say is keep the money where it is. Uki Memoyne B'Cheskes Mari. Now, it seems to be clearly against what our Mishnah is. So it must be that our Mishnah is a Tiyufta Rav Nachman, Rav Yochanan. Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman will answer, Kagan Sheish Esek Shvua B'Nehem. Hachinami Kagan Sheish Esek Shvua B'Nehem. So our Mishnah, where it says that Bar V'Shem Bar is where and therefore you're chayav to pay, is when there was a chiv shvua placed on him. Says Rashi, Sheschayvu lo shvua b'tainoisa. He was a chiv shvua. V'enu yochel shava. He's not able to make a shvua. Deha enu yodea kaimer, because he said, I don't know. So in the situation where there's shvua placed upon him, so therefore he has to make a shvua to partner himself. And he doesn't make that shvua because he says, I don't know. That's the reason why our Mishnah, it's not because of Bar Shem or Adav. Our Mishnah is talking about a situation where there was a chiv shvua placed on him that says he can't make the shvua because he says, I don't know. And that's the reason why he has to pay. However, normally would Taka say the principle of Uki Mamon B'Cheskes Mari. Now, Hechidami, Asik Shvua. What exactly is this case? Kedarava, as we continue to Sadi Chesam at Aleph, what is we talking about? The Amarava manlu biyadcha. Person says Yomi $100. V'lo omer ein locha biyadi el chamishim. He says, actually, no. I only owe you 50. Now that, as we know, is a case of a chiv d'oraisa, because it's a shvua moiva mixus. You're admitting to part, and as we've seen in many places in Shas, he's really just ishtemute. He really cannot be meiz panav, and therefore he has to admit to something. He really has to admit to everything, and it's just pushing him off. And therefore, it's not considered to be a case, as we've said in many places, that if he's nechshad on mamoina of stealing, that he'll be nechshad on shvua, because he's really not trying to steal. He doesn't want to pay back. He's just trying to push off the loan. But shari and yodeh, I don't know about the other 50, says Rashi. Havali moida mixus u'mechayiv shvua al hashar v'inu yachol l'shavag de'omer en yodeh. So we're gonna stop there, but that is basically what we're saying, is that in this particular situation, the din is that you are going to be chayiv to make a shvua, and since he can't, because he says any odea, therefore for that reason it will not, he'll have to pay. This is question TA 23. Hamashal oimer shul meisav oimer any odea chayiv madua. So either posh because bar v'shem or bar adif, or as we say, Kishesh Esek Shvua B'Nehem, and Mitash Yachli Shava Mishalem Adkan.